Welcome back. And now for the news in detail. Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan was addressing the nation, in which he said that India has made a historic, terrible mistake by depriving the Kashmiris of their special status by revoking the Article 370. He said that this happened due to arrogance, because the Indian government is not a normal government. It is pursuing the policies of extremism and fascism. He also said Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi has been the member of RSS, and he is pursuing that extremist ideology. And he also said that Pakistani government and the Pakistani people should stand together in order to send the message to 80 lakh people in Kashmir who are under consistent subjugation of Indian atrocities and brutalities, that Pakistanis stand united with the Kashmiris and for the Kashmir cause. He also said that Pakistan has been successful on two fronts. Pakistan has internationalized the Kashmir issue, as the Security Council has taken this issue after almost 50 years after 1965, and the Western media is also criticizing the Indian government and extensively covering this particular issue. The clampdown and the curfew in the occupied valley has entered in its 22nd day today as well. The Prime Minister also went on to say that this is the golden opportunity for the Kashmiris to take their inalienable right to self-determination and their freedom from Indian subjugation. The Prime Minister also said that it is the responsibility of the world community to take the cognizance that Pakistan and India are the two nuclear-armed neighbors, and any untoward incident over here in this region can trigger a catastrophe in this particular region. And he also said it is a test for the United Nations, which has promised to the Kashmiris their right to self-determination, whether it stands with the weak or not. He also said that Pakistan will keep supporting Kashmiris and their Kashmir cause until they get freedom, and Pakistan will keep on raising this particular issue on every international fora. He also said that Pakistani government had always tried to ask India to resolve all the outstanding issues through dialogue, but on the other hand, India, on one pretext or the other, had always tried to malign Pakistan. He also gave an example of the Pulwama incident. He said a person who tied a bomb to himself was a result of Indian brutalities and atrocities which were continuously happening on the part of Indian paramilitary forces and the Indian armed forces, which are doing atrocities every now and then, every day, against the youth of Kashmir. He also said that Indian atrocities will come to an end, and the day is not far enough when Kashmiris will be able to get their right to self-determination. He also said that the government in Pakistan will organize different events regarding Kashmir, and on this Friday he said that Pakistanis should talk about the Kashmir cause and also try to discuss all the things which are related to Kashmir cause from 12 p.m. till 12:30 p.m. And he also said that the government will announce the next event for Saturday later on. He called upon the world community to take the cognizance of the situation in Indian occupied Kashmir, as the crushing curfew and the clampdown on media has entered its 22nd day. He also said that it is the test for the United Nations to stand by the weak. The promises it made with the Kashmiris for their right to self-determination and through a plebiscite where they want to live. So this is a test for the United Nations and the world community, what role they can play in order to resolve this burning issue in this South Asian region. He also said that India has made a historic and a terrible mistake by depriving the Kashmiris of their special status by illegally revoking the Article 370 that gave special status to Kashmiris. He also said that India had been trying to build a narrative against Pakistan, which has been thwarted on diplomatic fronts by Pakistani diplomacy. And he also said that Pakistan has had victories on two fronts, that Pakistan internationalized the Kashmir issue, and after almost half a century, the United Nations Security Council has taken up the Kashmir issue and discussed it. And the Western media has also criticized the policies and the endeavors the Indian government is pursuing in Indian-occupied Kashmir. He also said that world must play its role rather than standing for the business interests. They should stand up for humanity and the United Nations, which had been promising the Kashmiris over the last many decades to give them their right to self-determination, whether the organization, the biggest organization in the world, stands with the weak or not. He also said as soon as his government came into power, they extended a hand of friendship and dialogue towards India. But since the government in India is not a normal one and it is pursuing and following the policy of extremism and fascism, and its policies are very much derived from the RSS ideology, hence it backtracks every time trying to malign Pakistan. Even after Pulwama incident, it put the blame right away without any investigation on Pakistan. But on the other hand, Pakistani diplomacy has won on international fora. The Security Council has taken up the matter and discussed it, and international media has also criticized the Indian atrocities and the brutalities happening in Indian-occupied Kashmir. He said that Pakistan always desires peace. As soon as his government came into power, the focus of his government and the goal of his government was to bring peace in the country and provide the best quality of life to its citizens. And those similar problems also exist in India. But rather than focusing on these problems, Indian government is pursuing its extremist policy and trying to malign Pakistan on different fronts. He said, however, Pakistan diplomacy has won on two fronts. It has internationalized the Kashmir issue, and till the Kashmiris get their freedom and their right to self-determination, Pakistani nation, the government and the people of Pakistan are collectively and standing with the Kashmiris, so that a clear message is sent not only to Kashmiris but also to the world community that Pakistanis will always support Kashmiris on diplomatic fronts, and they will keep on supporting Kashmiris politically, diplomatically. And Imran Khan further went on to say that India has done a terrible historic mistake due to the arrogance, and history is replete with examples. Wherever there happens to be arrogance on the state level, it turns out to be disastrous. And he also said that the time is not far away, and as he is taking the responsibility of pursuing this particular thing on the international fora, he will bring along this Kashmir issue at every international fora and bring it to the world attention that this is what exactly is happening. India has gone against the promises of its former Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru and also the so-called secular constitution of India, and has violated human rights in Indian-occupied Kashmir from last many decades. He said that it is up to the international community now whether they stand with the weak or not, or only pursue their business agendas. We'll keep you updated regarding this particular speech of the Prime Minister of Pakistan, which he made to the nation regarding Indian actions in occupied Kashmir. We'll move on with a couple of more stories in the news bulletin now. US President Donald Trump has once again offered to mediate between Pakistan and India on the Kashmir issue. Talking to reporters after meeting India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi on the G7 summit sidelines, Trump said he is still here to play his role in resolving the dispute. Trump says Modi has told him the situation in occupied Kashmir is under control. Responding to a question, the Indian Prime Minister said the Kashmir is a bilateral dispute between India and Pakistan. Modi's statement comes amid a crushing curfew imposed by India in occupied Kashmir after stripping the disputed state of its special status on August the 5th. On the other hand, US President Donald Trump has once again offered to mediate between Pakistan and India on the Kashmir issue. Talking to reporters after meeting India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi on the G7 summit sidelines, Trump said he is still here to play his role in resolving the dispute. Trump says Modi has told him the situation in occupied Kashmir is under control. Responding to a question, the Indian Prime Minister said that Kashmir is a bilateral dispute between India and Pakistan. Modi's statement comes amid a crushing curfew imposed by India in occupied Kashmir after stripping the disputed state of its special status on August the 5th. US President Donald Trump has once again offered his mediation between Pakistan and India on the Kashmir issue. Talking to reporters after the meeting with India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi on the G7 summit sidelines, Trump said he is still here to play his role in resolving the dispute. Trump said Modi has told him the situation in occupied Kashmir is under control. Responding to a question, the Indian Prime Minister said that Kashmir is a bilateral dispute between India and Pakistan. Modi's statement comes amid a crushing curfew imposed by India in occupied Kashmir after stripping the disputed state of its special status on August the 5th. Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan has said that India has done a terrible mistake by revoking Article 370 and depriving the Kashmiris of their special status. Amnesty International says New Delhi must immediately release all the detained politicians in occupied Kashmir. The valley has been under a crushing Indian curfew and communication blackout for 22 days. In a statement, Amnesty has asked Prime Minister Narendra Modi to end the deliberate silencing of voices in occupied Kashmir. It says the indefinite clampdown in the valley could further harm Kashmiris' lives. Amnesty has also said the media blackout in occupied Kashmir puts journalists at risk of being arrested or politically motivated charges. India has removed the flag of occupied Kashmir from its civil secretariat in Srinagar as part of its illegal revocation of the disputed state's special status. This comes as the curfew in Indian occupied Kashmir entered its 22nd day amid a continuing communication blackout. Under Article 370 of India's constitution, occupied Kashmir had its own flag hoisted alongside the Indian flag since 1952. Indian media reports said the Kashmir flag will be phased out from all the government buildings in occupied Kashmir by 31st of October. A split has emerged in the Indian media after the National Press Council expressed support for the government's gagging of journalists in occupied Kashmir. This comes after the council intervened against a Supreme Court petition filed with the Kashmir Times. The petition seeks an end to restrictions on press freedom and in the occupied valley. The Press Council of India claimed the government-imposed blackout is in India's interest. But the Press Association President Jai Shankar Gupta called the intervention arbitrary. In a statement, he said the Press Council is not one person but an institution and it cannot become a tool of the government. In an editorial, the Hindu newspaper said the council must act in the interest of a free media and not kowtow to the Modi administration. Meanwhile, Congress leader Rahul Gandhi has said the media in occupied Kashmir is facing brute force from the BJP government. US President Donald Trump says he wants to see a strong Iran but does not seek regime change in the country. Speaking on the sidelines of the G7 summit, Trump said he was not surprised by France's invitation to the Iranian foreign minister. He ruled out a meeting with Javad Zarif, saying it was too soon. The US president blamed Iran's government for the economic suffering of its people, saying they were being forced to live in a state of deprivation. Now moving on, Palestine has condemned the US for deleting its name from Washington's list of countries and states. The US State Department removed Palestinian territories from the updated list of countries on its website. In a statement, Palestinian presidential spokesman Nabil Abu Rudaine called Washington an instrument of Israeli occupation. Abu Rudaine said any move to undermine Palestinian rights is unjust and illegitimate. Palestine is still listed in the archived content, but no longer on the US State Department's primary list on its website. Palestine's foreign ministry also said Washington is implementing Israel's vision with destroying the two-state solution. Israeli warplanes have launched attacks on a Hamas military compound in Gaza. In a statement, Israel's military said its air force hit the office of Hamas battalion commander in retaliation to rocket attacks from Gaza. Palestinian security officials said there were no casualties in the Israeli airstrike. Meanwhile, Israeli forces have raided villages in the occupied West Bank and seized tapes from street surveillance cameras. The Palestinian Prisoners Society said Israeli forces have also arrested 6 Palestinians from towns and villages in the West Bank. In another development, the Palestinian Authority said Israeli settlers have blocked roads and pelted Palestinian vehicles with stones in the northern West Bank. Libya's eastern forces say they have killed 12 soldiers of the UN-backed government in intense fighting near the southern city of Gharian. In a statement, Commander Khalifa Haftar's forces said over 20 others were injured as well. The statement claimed eastern forces have seized positions near Gharian from fighters loyal to Tripoli. Analysts believe Gharian is a key supply line for the eastern forces who have laid siege to Tripoli since April. More than 1,000 people, including civilians, have been killed in the battle for the capital. The Saudi-led coalition in Yemen and the UAE have formed a military committee to stabilize a ceasefire in the southern Shabwa and Abiyan provinces. Coalition spokesman Turki al-Maliki says the committee will start working today to preserve Yemen's unity. This comes after southern separatists seized the port city of Aden earlier this month and extended their control to neighboring Abiyan last week. Saudi Arabia and the UAE have called on the separatists and the government to disengage and enable the redeployment of coalition forces. The foreign ministries of both the states have called for dialogue to address the causes and the repercussions of the fighting in southern Yemen. We'll move back to the story when the US President Donald Trump has once again offered to mediate between Pakistan and India on the Kashmir issue. Talking to reporters after meeting India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi on the G7 summit sidelines, Trump said he is still here to play his role in resolving the dispute. To talk more about this, we have been joined by our New Delhi correspondent, Neha Punia. Neha, thank you for joining in. First of all, would you like to shed a little bit of light on this particular statement by Prime Minister Narendra Modi, as President Trump told that Narendra Modi has told him that the situation in Kashmir is under control. Is that so? Is the situation under control in Kashmir?
As far as the Indian government is concerned, that's been their stated position for the last 21 days. In fact, ever since that security clampdown was put in place in Indian-administered Jammu and Kashmir. As early as this weekend, the government claimed that everything was well on the ground, that yes, while there is a continued need for excessive security deployment on the ground in Kashmir, the situation remains normal, that there's been relatively no loss to life. There was only one death reported on Monday morning India time in a stone pelting incident, and that too the government says that the protesters hit accidentally passers-by, and that's how that death occurred. But the Indian government claims that there are enough facilities on the ground to ensure that normal life has not been hit in many ways, that there are enough medical supplies on the ground so that normal life is carrying on as it were prior to these restrictions coming into place. And as far as the information clampdown is concerned, yes, landlines aren't working to the full extent that internet and cable TV clampdown continues, but the government says that's completely necessary, keeping in mind that there is credible intelligence which tells them that there could be attempts to try and mislead people and spread misinformation on the ground. So the government on its part says that everything appears normal, but of course we've heard many reports of protests taking place, of unrest on the ground, and people being very angry and upset with the Indian government.
Okay, Neha, we know that after revoking Article 370 of India's constitution and depriving the Kashmiris of their special status, India had the stance that it is the internal matter of India. Now, after meeting President Trump, Prime Minister Narendra Modi said that the Kashmir issue is a bilateral issue between Pakistan and India. So what prompted actually this change of stance?
I think it would be incorrect to call it a change in stance. It's simply a matter of interpretation, because the Indian government has clarified this repeatedly. In fact, this is something that many opposition parties in India had also accused the government of having a double stand on. And the government maintains that as far as Jammu and Kashmir is concerned, it views that as a completely integral part of India, including what it refers to as Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. It does agree that there is a border dispute which is a bilateral matter between India and Pakistan, just like there are outstanding border disputes with China as well, which also controls about 20% of Jammu and Kashmir. So it would be incorrect to say this is a change in stance, but the Indian government has maintained that what happened in Indian administered Jammu and Kashmir is completely internal to India's own administration, because that's a region that it governs and controls.
So during today's meeting between President Trump and Prime Minister Narendra Modi, President Donald Trump once again offered his mediation in order to resolve the Kashmir dispute. Do you think after today's meeting there is any hope or the likelihood of any sort of mediation that India can accept, after they said that it is a bilateral issue? On the other hand, President Trump said that he's here actually to mediate between the two countries. So is there any likelihood, or there could be a sort of a watershed on the Indian side of the government?
When it comes to Kashmir, we've all known that interpretations of statements to do with that region are looked at differently on either side of the border. For example, what you're referring to as a reiteration by Donald Trump to mediate on Kashmir once again is being viewed as by Indian authorities and experts as a comment where they're focusing more on what he said before that, where he said that as far as Kashmir is concerned, he believes that India and Pakistan will be able to resolve this between themselves. When it comes to bilateral talks, as far as Donald Trump's statement is concerned, Indian experts say that this is very significant, because in the last two instances where he spoke of Kashmir, he directly spoke of mediation, said that the US would offer its help. This time he simply said that India and Pakistan can resolve this on their own. So they're saying that this is certainly a diplomatic win for India. Speaking of a dialogue between the two nations, we know India's stated position. They say that there can be no conversation with Islamabad as long as there is terror that continues to emanate from across the border. But Prime Minister Modi did speak of trying to collaborate with Pakistan to try and achieve...
Thank you very much, Neha Punia. Our New Delhi correspondent was updating us on developments which are happening as President Donald Trump has once again offered his mediation to resolve the Kashmir issue between Pakistan and India. And it's time for a short break, and more stories to follow right after a short break. Stay tuned with Indus. Welcome back. Russia says it is ready for negotiations on the nuclear arms control with the U.S. as soon as it receives a positive signal. Deputy Foreign Minister Sergei Rybkov says Moscow has invited Washington for immediate talks. Rybkov said the Russian Foreign Ministry is awaiting a yes from the U.S. Earlier, President Vladimir Putin said no time should be wasted in resuming full-format stability and security talks with Washington. This comes after the two countries terminated the Cold War-era Intermediate-Range Nuclear Forces Treaty earlier this month and began testing new missiles. The New START treaty between the US and Russia is due to expire in 2021. French President Emmanuel Macron says the G7 nations are close to an agreement on helping fight raging fires in the Amazon rainforest. Macron says the group is looking to finalize a deal to provide technical and financial help later today. A record number of 80,000 fires are ravaging the Brazilian Amazon. Many world leaders have criticized President Jair Bolsonaro's government for not doing enough to tackle the blazes. Earlier, France threatened to block the European Union's trade pact with the South American trade bloc, Mercosur, unless Brazil took urgent action. But German Chancellor Angela Merkel opposed the idea, saying it is not an appropriate response. With climate change outpacing scientific research, a team of NASA scientists have spent the last 4 summers in Greenland. The Oceans Melting Greenland is a mission that drops probes to collect data on how oceans contribute to rapid melting of Greenland's ice sheet. Let's watch this report.
Our scientists have landed in Greenland, but not on a summer reprieve. A team is investigating how warmer layers of water off the ocean's coast come into contact with glaciers. They measure the overall effect of this phenomena by gauging the speed at which glaciers melt. The team is expecting meters of sea level rise in the next 100 years and considers it a huge threat to millions of people.
The planet is heating up because of human-caused climate change, and Greenland is feeling the impact in a big way. Now, a lot of people think of the ice here as melting from the air warming, sort of like an ice cube under a hairdryer. But in fact, the oceans are also eating away at the ice's edges. That's because the glaciers flow right into the ocean, and they can feel the warming water and are retreating because of it.
3/4 of the island's coastline are next to the Arctic Ocean, and it is 85% covered in ice. The Arctic region was warmed up twice as fast as the global average, and Greenland has become a focal point for climate research. Stop. This data is valuable because it allows researchers to quantitatively relate changes in ocean temperatures with melting ice. This research can one day help humans affect policy change to reverse the dire consequences of global warming.
Tourists flock to areas to see new societies and habitats. But for one island, the surge in global tourism is proving to be more disastrous than its contribution to the local economy. To protect it from habitat loss, Indonesia plans to close Komodo Island to the public from January 2020. Find out why in this report.
Indonesia's Komodo Island is part of Komodo National Park, an area between the islands of Sumbawa and Flores. It was visited by more than 180,000 tourists in 2018. Not only are tourists attracted to the island's beautiful beaches, but also its Komodo dragons, the largest living species of lizards. But the government wants to close the island to stop interference and cut the risk of poaching.
I think if they close to tourism because it's like destroying the habitation of like the dragon and the villager, it's good. If they close it to do something else, maybe like resorts or like build something that it doesn't belong to the nature, it's not a great idea.
This plan also involves moving about 2,000 villages off the island. This is part of a scheme to turn it into a premium tourist destination ahead of its potential reopening a year later. For villagers who have been living on the island for generations, relocation would mean losing their family roots and only source of income.
We have been living here as one for years with this Komodo village. So if we are ordered to move, we don't want to. Moreover, my ancestors and fathers' graves are here. If we move, what will happen to their graves?
Details about the relocation are still unknown, but the closure has sparked fear and protests.
We hope the government can deal with conservation in a more humane way to increase the population of Komodo dragons and revive the ecosystem of Komodo Island, not by closing Komodo Island, nor breaking the ties between the community and the Komodo dragons.
For a community thriving on these dragons and the business they attract, their survival is under threat. The government needs a sustainable plan to make the process of relocation smoother.
Nearly 900 Mexican dancers in the city of Guadalajara have established a new Guinness World Record for the world's biggest folk dance. Suffocating heat failed to dampen the enthusiasm of the 882 dancers who easily broke the existing record. More in this report.
Mexican folk dancing is renowned for its stunning display of twirling colors and feet stamping to the rhythms of traditional mariachi music. That reputation has now been enhanced by 882 local artists. They attempted to break the Guinness World Record for the largest ever folk dance over the weekend. Dancers of all ages dazzled an enthusiastic audience in Guadalajara, where the old record was set in 2011.
We had 882 participants. This sets a new record worldwide for the world's biggest Mexican folk dance. They had the challenge of beating the record obtained in 2011 by the Chamber of Commerce with 457 participants.
The folk dancers performed for more than 5 minutes without a pause to establish the new record. Dancers say the attempt to set a record in searing heat was worth the effort.
Well, I'm excited because we set a new Guinness record. I'm thrilled.
The Mexican city of Guadalajara holds 11 Guinness World Records. This includes the highest number of mariachis playing in unison.
Nunu Job's life is focused on conservation. He spends most days tracking southern white rhino on foot while educating communities and schools on the importance of wildlife. Game rangers like Nunu are now on the front line of the war against poaching. Let's watch this report.
Nunu Jobe knows the bush intimately. He was an antelope poacher in his youth and now as a ranger at the Hlutluwe Mfolozi Park in South Africa's KwaZulu-Natal province, he is using his skills to protect wildlife, including rhino. Nunu also draws on his unique experiences to educate school children and communities living near the park about conservation issues.
Most of the guests of which are like international or white people, and it's always more like in English. And so I said, it's unfair for people, local people, because they don't get a chance, like to see what is inside. At the other hand, what are we expecting from them if they don't know what a rhino is? And I was a poacher before, but now I'm a conservationist.
In 2017 alone, more than 1,000 rhino were poached in South Africa, including 270 killed here in KwaZulu-Natal. This school group, the first to visit the park with Nunu, learned firsthand about the impact of poaching.
My wish is to learn a lot more about them because I was never really aware of them. As a science student, I just thought I would naturally go into medicine, but from what I learned today, I saw that this isn't the only possibility. I can do wonderful things here in my community, like to conserve animals and to contribute to the economy of South Africa.
Nunu now believes that conservation is his true calling, and to be closer to nature, he hung up his boots and decided to go barefoot 2 years ago. Game rangers like Nunu are on the front line of the war against poaching, often confronted with former accomplices, and they rely heavily on community conservation awareness to try and stem the tide while the continent's rhino population continues to dwindle.
Everyone would love to spend a few days relaxing at a secluded island resort. But what if you replace the sand and stone with plastic bottles? That's exactly the experience a movable seaside resort in the Ivory Coast offers. More in this report. refreshing drinks, tasty meals, and a dip in the water are all a standard part of a beachside resort experience. What makes this resort in the Ivory Coast different? That it's man-made, floating on plastic bottles.
It is an artificial island that is built with waste from the lagoon, mainly plastic bottles. The artificial island is made up of about 700,000 plastic containers.
The floating island has quickly become one of the biggest tourist attractions in Abidjan, the Ivory Coast's financial hub. 700,000 buoyant plastic bottles were used in its construction, along with other recycled debris.
It's very original. It's a very unusual place. I haven't seen anything like it anywhere else. I think it's a great idea to give a second life to plastic and make it a kind of technical feat. I really like this place and I think it deserves to be known.
The floating island gets about 100 customers a week, many of whom are eco-friendly tourists. The resort's inventor, Eric Becker, says his 200-ton resort could be a prototype for other major projects. Currently, he is testing technology that would allow him to turn fecal matter in this lagoon into compost. Becker says if everyone did what they could to protect the climate on an individual scale, a serious difference could be made. Lows on the highs of the business world. Now European stock markets have risen after China and the US sought to soften their trade war rhetoric. The DAX in Frankfurt and Paris's CAC index are both trading 0.5% higher after investors brought back funds from safe havens. Yields for long-term sovereign bonds are flat after gaining ground in Asian trading. Oil prices have also rebounded from early losses and are currently up about 1%. Earlier, Asian bourses plummeted in response to trade tensions between the US and China. The Hang Seng index closed down nearly 2% following violent clashes in Hong Kong yesterday. The Shanghai Composite also lost more than 1% after the yuan slid to an 11-year low in onshore trade. The Nikkei 225 index dropped more than 2% despite the announcement that Japan and the US have agreed in principle on a trade agreement. Japan denies it has made too many concessions in the trade talks with the US. This comes after President Donald Trump reached an agreement with Japan's Prime Minister Shinzo Abe on the sidelines of the G7 summit in France.
Trump says the trade deal with Japan would probably be signed during the UN General Assembly in New York next month. U.S. Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer says the deal would give American firms access to Japanese markets worth over $7 billion. He says the deal would cover agriculture, industrial tariffs, and digital trade. Trump says they also agreed that Japan would buy surplus U.S. corn. But some Japanese commentators say Tokyo has made too many concessions. At a news conference in Tokyo, Chief Cabinet Secretary Yoshihide Soga defended the deal.
Negotiations have been underway based on a joint statement that the two countries agreed on September 26th last year. Since both sides agreed in line with that, which I believe is very meaningful, I don't think it is true that Japan compromised too much in trade talks with the US.
If finalized, the trade deal between Japan and the US will be reached just as the trade war with China escalates.
We start with cricket in the world of sports. New Zealand have beaten Sri Lanka in the second test at Colombo to draw their two-match series. The Kiwis won by an innings and 65 runs to register their first win in the World Test Championships. Tom Latham was declared man of the match for his innings of 154 runs. Centuries from Latham and Bradley Watling helped the Kiwis score up 431 runs in reply to Sri Lanka's first innings score of 244. The hosts were 187 runs behind when they started their second innings on the final day. Nirushan Dickwella was the only batsman to reach 50 as the hosts were bowled out for 122. In northern Pakistan, leading rally driver Nadir Maksi has won the third edition of the world's highest cold desert Jeep rally. Sahibzada Sultan came second and Babar Khan was third in the Sarfaranga Jeep rally, staged in Skardu district of mountainous Gilgit-Baltistan. The women's category was won by Mrs. Rashid Abdullah, while Reena Shahab was the runner-up. The three-day rally was contested by 51 Pakistani rally drivers. And now the weather situation from around the globe. And that's all for now. For further updates, stay tuned to Indus News.